I appreciate it. I hope I wasn't being too combative or.
No, not at all.
disrespectful.
Not at all.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't live in this neighborhood, but I do, when I was in college, started going to that park. And the draw of the park is the view. Thank you.
Yes.
The draw of the park is the view. So the problem is not the people. The problem is where the view is located and how it inconveniences the homeowners that live near the park. So instead of focusing on fixing a problem that no one's going to be happy with whatever solution, because there'll still be people there making noise, possibly illegal activities, whatever's irritating the homeowners. There's plenty of options and opportunity to create a beautiful park, make Sycamore Canyon open later, or create a viewpoint across the street. There's plenty of opportunities in Riverside to make another beautiful park, especially since those areas are already designated as open space. So move the park away from the people, and the people will go where it's not a problem.
That is
I know.
very expensive. Super expensive. But thank you. I appreciate that.
I have paid for the park with my property tax, so I feel very strongly about it. It's a neighborhood park. So if you have to go to the bathroom, you go home, you go to the bathroom, and then come back to the park. You know, I do sometimes drive my dogs up to the park in the morning, but Lord knows I never get a parking place any other time. And I don't know if it would help if we had parking permits for homeowners. But I don't think putting in 15 more parking places is going to make any difference. Yes, it's going to make, but because more people are going to come, and she's absolutely right. We need to have another place. You know, up at the top of Alexandria where they're building warehouses or something. You know,
No, there's another
No, I appreciate it. Definitely. It's a work in progress. So Sycamore Highlands Park is still, it's still a ways out. We still haven't secured funding for it totally. So, and
I hope
these
you
two are
don't.
just options.
I hope you don't.
Okay, I'll take
One
that
more
back.
question.
I was
Yeah.
a part of the design team of this park, this original when it was built, and it was a conscious decision to not allow for a parking area because they wanted it to be for the community, for people to walk to the park. They felt like if they put a parking lot in, it would draw from outside community and would create, parking area for the park or whatever that was. So when we designed it, we tried to design it so that we had plenty of off-street parking, and that's why it was built the way it was built. This is what it was supposed to be, but I understand how it's popular park.
Yeah, it's been a popular park for some years now. I'm sure we all know, and with the increased population growth and just more and more students learning about the park and going up there are parking challenges, and that's where the folks that are in the adjoining streets right there kind of raised the concerns and brought about this process. But we'll see where it goes, and we'll definitely have some more updates for y'all at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Yeah. Well,
One thing to follow up on that, I checked where all the parks and community centers are in the city, and about 85% of them are all down near the freeway or on the north side of the city, including all the pools. All the pools are the other side of the freeway. Most all the community centers are on the other side of the freeway or just on this side of the freeway. The only thing we have is Orange Terrace, and we've got this park over in Sycamore Canyon, and we've got the little Taft Park, which doesn't have parking either. People walk to that. But you're right, we don't have enough parks and community centers, and we certainly don't have a pool up here for us to use. Some of the pool areas in the community, they're only 1.5 miles apart from each other. So you can go from one pool, and Brian drove by one of the pools the other day in 100-degree weather, and there was nobody there down in Arlington. So a lot of this area south has been kind of neglected when it comes to parks and community centers. So that's one of the things we need to pressure on with the city as we move forward. Okay, so next. If I can get my computer to work.
Louis, we have time for one more.
What's that?
We have time for another question.
Okay.
Rivershire. And the park came in 2005 after, I believe, and people on the other side of Goodard here would probably know, about 2 years of building. And there are some of us here who've lived on the street since the homes went up in 2001. Since 2005, we have lived hell on our street. We have over 200 cars a day parking on the street until this barrier went up. We have condoms up and down the street. We have liquor bottles, beer bottles, fast food, diapers, people actively having sex. And I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm talking about 40, 50-year-old people in cars. I have, we have offered, we went through 3 city council members. We offered to pay for security guards, pay for cameras. We did neighborhood watch, they told us to do. We call, they know us all by name when we call. There's cars out here, there's partying, screaming in the park, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, on and on and on. And, the fireworks, yeah. I've had to evacuate my house twice because of fireworks.
Wow.
They come up in the park and then they go in, set them off, and they go into the camp. Yes. So it's been a nightmare. And I realize that other streets are now being impacted, and all I can say is that that's what we've lived with since 2005. And this was a solution that frankly we did not think would work, but it has worked, putting a barrier just at the end of our street so people can't, they're too lazy to park and then walk through the barrier. But that's how crazy it is.
Well, that's why we brought this up, and also because Ward 2 now extends into Mission Grove, it cuts off at Alessandro, so we're now part of Ward 2, or we were Ward 4. So we're taking an interest in this when the election comes up in 26, and there might even be a special election before that. If Ms. Cervantes gets elected to the Assembly in November, there'll be a special election to replace her for a short term until the 26 election. So there could be a lot of things happening and changes in Ward 2 moving forward.
Well, we're not complaining about her, but
Right.
what was not mentioned was the plan we were presented with for an additional 13 parking spaces or 17 was going to cost the city approximately $2 million, we were told, and it was going to take approximately 2 years to do.
At
I
least.
think you use that money to do enforcement because they don't ticket on a regular basis. And I was also told they cannot tow cars that are illegally parked. That's against the city policy. You
Right.
start doing both those things and you're going to resolve the problem for everybody. Thank you.
Well, that's why we wanted you to come and why we made this an issue, because we want to support that and put the force of our group behind it so that we can help push something through and get the city to pay attention to the parks and community stuff that's on this south side of the city. We not only don't have very many, that there's not much attention to it. Okay, so moving on, we're going to get introduced to the Engage Riverside, the small farms group, with Audrey's going to come up and tell us for a few minutes about this new group, what they're doing, and how we can get involved.
Thank you. I met Lewis a little while ago at Neighbors Better Together, and I'm excited that he invited me here to introduce Engage Riverside to you all. I'm actually a little nervous because you're such an organized and well put together and effective group that it's kind of exciting to get to share. He shared your off-quarantine letter with me, and I have to say I was incredibly impressed with the level of research and effort that you all put into that letter. That was fantastic. So who is Engage Riverside and what is our mission? So our mission is super simple. It's to protect, preserve, and promote agriculture and open space within the Greenbelt, but also within Riverside as a whole. We were started in the Arlington Greenbelt. That is obviously our primary focus, but our goal is to be a group that is beneficial to the entire city at large. So this is a great goal, protect, preserve, and promote, but what's the tangibility? What have we actually done, and what do we plan on doing? So we want to begin as a platform to provide information, to reach out to the community, and also to provide assistance to new farmers, existing farmers, anyone who wants to get into farming or learn about farming, and then organize marketing efforts and organize the branding of agriculture and produce from Riverside. Okay, so what is our focus vision? The future of Riverside could be beautiful. I mean, it's already fantastic, but we have to have a direction on where we're going and what do we want. So what does Engage want? We want to maintain our idyllic urban agriculture interface, have a uniform branding for all members and anyone who wants to produce in Riverside, to create a community message board so we can get to know each other, get to know our neighbors. If you're not familiar with the Arlington Heights neighborhood, it's 5-acre lots. So it's not a tract where you see your neighbors every day. It's 5-acre lots. There are no sidewalks. It's 3-foot gutters that are quite terrifying to drive past. There's very little light at night, so we are more isolated. So we don't necessarily meet each other. And then there's no parks, there's no community services to motivate our neighbors to get out and get to know each other without actively getting to know each other. So we are a little bit disjointed. We needed unity, someone to bring us together. And we would like to be a strong voice for the residents of Arlington Heights and the Greenbelt, but also for agriculture in Riverside and the protection and conservation of green space and open space. So we are working on our nonprofit status now. We originally were started as a for-profit organization, but with the off-quarantine and the lack of support of agriculture from the city, it became apparent that we needed to organize and do something about this, because our Measure C, the Greenbelt is not going anywhere, and if we don't get active as a group, it's just going to become well, I mean, we'll get there, but it'll become ineffective. Sorry, got a little shrill. It'll become ineffective. It will be just giant mansions on giant lots with weeds, and it won't be what the vision was for the people who put it in place. So a little bit of history. I'm going to assume that not everyone knows, not everyone grew up here like I did. I'm originally from Riverside. I grew up in the Greenbelt. I went to UCR. I studied plant genetics and pathology there. I got a job in an organic fertilizer company, and now I am the next generation of Greenbelt growers, as well as the president of Engage Riverside. So a little bit of history on our neighborhood, right? Citrus came in 1873. It was brought to Riverside. It created this giant economic boom for Southern California. This desert wasteland was suddenly turned into this beautiful verdant place. Part of what made that possible was Matthew Gage bringing water from the Bunker Hill Basin to the area and ultimately all the way basically to Corona. So the Gage Canal is really the lifeblood of agriculture in Riverside and what made that possible. The Gage Canal Company was founded. Then lots were parceled out in 40 acres and eventually subdivided into 5. And in 1979, the citizens of Riverside were threatened by the urban sprawl that they saw happening very, very quickly, particularly in the La Sierra area and in the press. Groves were being turned into housing tracts, high-density housing tracts, condos, things like that. So they sought to protect their open space and protect their quality of life. 2023 came around and it became obvious that the city had failed in their commitment to provide any sort of realistic support for agriculture and promotion for support in agriculture, that agriculture was actively under threat because we are all small farmers. Most of the lots are 5-acre lots, 10-acre lots. It's homeowners who are more hobbyists and they use their produce to pay their property taxes for the year, or they use it as a small income and they're retired and this is their retirement income. So it's not large farming operations that have access to all the resources you would expect someone in India or in any sort of large farming operation to have. And it's rapidly turning into nurseries instead of food produce. Now, we accept agriculture in all forms. As a group, we have not limited that. So we are amicable to agriculture in all forms, but groves are prettier, right? Groves are more attractive. Row crops are more attractive, and things like that. So it became obvious that there's a need for us. So how does this apply to you all? Your quality of life could be affected. The Greenbelt offers recreation, so there's a walking trail down Victoria. It is absolutely beautiful. It's a wonderful place to run. It's a wonderful place to jog. People by CBU takes huge advantage. There's joggers up and down my street every morning, people on their horses, walking along the canal, all these wonderful things. There's reduced urban sprawl because we have lower density housing. There are no warehouses, which we all hate there. And then there's increased local beauty, right? So there's a lot of research that comes into play here with urban centers and the amount of exposure their residents get to green time. So there's also opportunities in agriculture. We want to provide resources to going into farming for yourself if you're interested, existing farmers to have resources to continue to grow and develop, and then enhance access to fresh local produce. So there are several farmers markets and different fruit stands or farm stands in Riverside, but they are not necessarily local, and if you've been to any of them, they're not necessarily exhaustive, right? You'll see a lot of stands that have very similar produce, and it's not necessarily grown in Riverside. So we would like to see uniform, available, reliable, delicious, fresh, local produce grown right here in Riverside for everyone in the city. And something that you're probably very familiar with or aware of is that your neighborhoods are also designated as an open space conservation area in the existing city plan. So if you want to take a look at it, it's our neighborhoods, Rancho La Sierra, the unincorporated areas surrounding you all, as well as what I'm going to call the crests and the heights, are originally designated as open space conservation areas that should be low density housing. So without agriculture, what happens in open space areas? They become centers of industry as people move on, because there's no protection for any sort of environmental conservation, but they can't build high density housing. So the natural progression ends up being those warehouses and shopping centers that were not necessarily providing any real service and causing more problems. So how can you all get involved, or what are we trying to do? So community activism, we're representing the interests of farmers in Riverside. We want to have reliable resources for those farmers to effectively produce wonderful produce and increase the variety of produce available for everyone. We are advocating for fair policy, and then we want to provide financial assistance. So that's the huge motivator behind us moving to a 501c3 status. So the application is finished. It's probably another month until I hear back from the federal government on if we get to be 501c3, but in order to apply for block grants and funding, a lot of funding that's available from the USDA and the CDFA is not available to small farmers on an individual basis. You have to have a nonprofit or some sort of collaborative organization apply for you. So we want to be that service for anyone in the city who wants to get into farming. And we want to enhance the community. So even if you don't want to farm, but you do love having urban agriculture available to you, you are welcome to join us, to volunteer with us, to operate with us as we continue to grow. So direct correlation to what you all worked with, the Oriental Fruit Fly Quarantine. So back in January, we had a meeting. It was a very large meeting, mostly attended by citrus growers, the USDA, the CDFA, and then the Ag Commissioner's Office were all present. It went really well, and we kind of brought them up to speed on what agriculture in Riverside really looks like. And through that, we were able to build a relationship with them, and through several letters and dogged persistence on my part, we eventually were able to get in contact with the people in charge who had the authority to make the decision. And what was unprecedented about what happened is that by bringing them up to speed on the situation of agriculture in Riverside and how what they were asking us to do was essentially impossible and horribly detrimental to what would be happening, horribly detrimental to the operations happening in the Greenbelt, they decided to release the city of Riverside from the quarantine before the entire quarantine was over. And normally what happens is that the quarantines expand and the boundaries remain stable until there are no more instances of the pest being found, and they release the entire area all at once. So I mean, little props to us and everyone else involved for continuing to hold them accountable, because otherwise it could have been a whole another year and a whole another crop lost. So it didn't just affect citrus, it was all produce. Essentially all produce in the city of Riverside was unsaleable because of the timing and because of the lack of information. So what else have we done? When I mentioned that Engage Riverside is for the entire community, we did participate in planting 27 avocado trees at the Casablanca Home for Neighborly Service. These avocado trees are all outside the fence, and they will be available for people to come and glean from. It's a resource for the community, so those trees were donated by Engage Riverside, and then in collaboration with Target and Cure. So we really do want to encourage the entire city to have available local produce and to continue to have a beautiful way of life. So how could you get involved if you wanted to get involved? So obviously I'm here to share our mission with you, but also to let you know that you can be involved with us if this is something that you care about. So if you have any sort of expertise that you'd love to give, if you're participating in any organizations related to gardening, conservation, any sort of environmental thing, open space, we would love to have your expertise. Come and share with us. We'd love to have your time, obviously monetary donations, any sort of connections or resources that you'd have, or just share your story. And what could you get from us? What are we here to give? We are here to give financial support, community support, new opportunities, and also representation on the state and local level as well. So membership is open to all. If you did want to apply, it's free to apply. You just create a member profile on our website. You can learn more about our mission statement and who we are as well. Right here in the upper corner, there'll be member login. So anyone can be a member. With member access, you get priority distribution for any sort of funding that we do get. And we have just finished the application for our first block grant. The block grant is for specialty crops. And what's really cool about it is everything counts as a specialty crop. And the grant is to get new farmers started in farming in Riverside. And we have the location already chosen. They'll be fantastic. We'll put in a bunch of community plots as well as train new farmers and then have that produce available locally weekly. So that's the goal. If we get that funding, it'll be fantastic. So you would get priority access to that funding. You would get priority access to our community forum, as well as priority access to any sort of additional resources that we may have. If you would like to participate on a higher level, it's $50 a year. But then you'll see this membership thing, you create your profile, and then you get access to all those things I was talking about. We have a calendar with important dates regarding agricultural policy, regarding city policies, because we want to be active in the city as well as active statewide, and important dates for any sort of cross-references. So we are very well connected with the Riverside and Corona Resource Conservation District. So we also cross-promote everything that they do as well. But thank you for your time. I appreciate all of you having me here. If anyone has questions, I have some time for questions. So, yes, love.
Are you at all connected with Riverside Food Co-op?
We are not connected with Riverside Food Co-op yet. I've met them, and they are fantastic people. So I'm in contact with them, but we have not found they're actually looking for a location, right? Like a store.
I'm sorry?
They are in the process where they're actively looking for a store location, right? That's their next step. Perfect. Okay, yeah. Thank you for telling me about them, because that's really cool. I love that.
Any other questions?
No. Oh, fantastic.
Thank you a lot, Grace.
Give her a big hand. I'm real happy to see some young people getting involved in all this stuff instead of a bunch of us old whatever. Okay, Kmart. So the city council needs to override several things on Kmart. We've talked about this before, but just to review it, they have to override and change the general plan, the specific plan, the zoning for the project to mixed-use urban. I personally have a problem with that, and I'm going to address that with the planning department's report because we are not urban. We are in a suburban area. They are trying to urbanize a suburban area, just like they've done in other places in Los Angeles and others. So they don't get their terms right, and they call us basically an urban area. We're not an urban area. They also have to override the airport commission ruling. There's still issues, and we haven't been able to get these addressed yet, with the occupancy levels now going to 6 people per 1 bedroom, and the unbundled parking issue, where now you don't get a parking place included with your rent, you have to pay extra, and now the question is how many people are going to decide to opt out if they've got a shopping center full of empty parking spaces, right? There could be a bunch. And then there's also a new law on EV charging port requirements. It doesn't affect this project so much, but it does others. You have to have a certain percentage of charge ports available at certain charge levels because they're encouraging electric cars. You know, you can't buy a car other than an electric car after 2030, I think it is. You can buy hybrids, but regular gas cars are going to go away. Those all become issues that are addressed. Here is, again, the project, the artist's conception of it. We contacted the airport commission. We actually went to their offices at the county, which I don't think anyone had hardly ever been there before, because they were kind of surprised that anyone, they thought we got lost on the wrong floor. Are you guys looking for the restroom, or what's wrong? You know, what are you doing here? So we said, no, well, we're here to talk to the airport commission. Is that you guys? Well, yeah, that's us, I guess. So we talked with them about their next steps in any of these issues where the city of any kind decides to come back and override their decision. Now, they've already decided to override the decision for the Sears building down in Arlington, and that hearing or meeting is coming up on September 17th. We need to pay attention to that because that'll be a precursor to what ours is going to be on December 3rd. So we need to attend that meeting as much as possible and pay attention to what goes on there, because that will kind of tell us what they're going to do. Now, the big issue that we had, we're trying to meet up with the planning department. We're trying to get a meeting with them, because I personally want to find out why the planning department is writing reports that support the developer and support the owner, and they're not being independent and objective. It says right in the code of the city resolution 2076 or whatever it is at the start of every city council meeting, it says right down in there, city staff shall be objective. Very short sentence. Yet I have yet to see a report from the city staff that was thoroughly objective and independent and impartial. And I know what that means. I've been a real estate appraiser since 1982. That's all we do, is objective, impartial, be careful what terms we use and so on, so we don't create some kind of an influence on the property that we're appraising or looking at or doing an analysis on. I have not seen one of the reports. At the end of every one of their reports, no matter whether it's to the planning commission or the city council, they always end with, here's what we want you to do. We want you to approve this and approve that and approve this and approve that. Well, if the city council or the planning is just going to approve it, then you don't need them. And they're getting ready to spend a bunch of money with a consultant to redo the general plan and have a bunch of public meetings. Well, if we're going to let Sacramento dictate all the zoning and all the changes and ADUs and the setbacks and all this stuff, then why do we need to hire somebody and why do we need to change the general plan? The state's just going to dictate it. If we're going to let them dictate it, then we need to get rid of the city council, get rid of half of the city staff, if the state's just going to dictate how everybody works. If not, then we need to take control of it and start fighting some of this stuff back, because it's just going to turn our city into a mess.
It's already a mess.
It's already, yeah. Well, the traffic certainly is. So, one of the things we're planning on doing, and here's a picture of the project for those of you that forgotten, it's going to go all the way out to the street by the car wash. It's the land all the way over. It includes part of the parking spaces. They're going to have like 513 parking spaces within the project, and then they're able to share 91 parking spaces with the shopping center. My own anticipation is they're going to end up with about 700 to 1,000 cars. Because when you look at the apartment buildings, apartment complexes nearby, if you go on the web and look up apartments.com, they give you apartments, and then if you go down to the bottom, they have ratings. And so they have walkability rating, right? In other words, how good is it to walk and to get to services? The walkability rating in those apartments that are right nearby is 58. It's not very high. The other one is, the big one, is the transit rating. On is there rapid transit nearby or public transportation? That one's even worse. The rating is 27. Yet the big pitch for this project is people can walk to where they want to go. They can go to the movie theater. They can go to IHOP. They can go over to the car wash and watch the cars go through and watch them. And maybe they can help polish someone's wheels and make some extra money. You know, there's very exciting things to do there. They can walk over and watch the children play at the daycare. You know, they can go over to Panera Bread and watch how they bake the bread. There's a lot of interesting things they're going to be able to do by living in that project. And they won't need a car, see, to do any of that. Those Stater Brothers and Sprouts will be all they need to shop. And even though it says in that transit score 27, the residents of Riverside do not commute with a car. Where we end up with crossing gates in order to be able to get in, because the cars from the apartments have taken over the shopping center, and we can't get into the retail stores, and it ends up a mess. Now, we met with 4 of the city council members to talk about this, because we were told, and I put that in the letter that I sent to them, that this was a done deal. We were told by the owner, we were told by at least one of the city council members. So we met with 3 city council members, and they got all excited. Well, we didn't say it was a done deal. It's still, we haven't decided yet. And then proceeded to tell us how we need more apartments. So, but supposedly there's 4 that are still undecided. The problem is that, oh, and here's the rest of the dates that happened. We did the EIR back in June 24th. Remember, we did about 1,000 questions that we sent in. The Planning Commission meeting was on the 18th of July, which we attended that, a number of us. And then the City Council meeting on the 17th will be coming up. We're just going to handle the Sears Center. And we, of course, had Article 14 of the consent calendar that they did not bother. And I got a pretty good argument with the council members on the consent calendar. The consent calendar is pretty clear. It's for items where there's no controversy. It's like for, you know, we're running out of trash cans because they're being destroyed by the trucks that pick them up, so we need to buy 500 more trash cans. Well, there's little argument over buying 500 more trash cans. You either need the trash cans or you don't, right? Those are the kind of things that go on the consent calendar, not a new project where you're already putting in the project, you're saying, we're prepared to override what the airport commission does, we're prepared to override the general plan, the specific plan, and the zoning, and we're warning everybody that we're going to have a meeting and public hearing to do this in 45 days. That's not standard traffic that goes through the consent calendar. That's stuff that's up for debate, and that's all we were asking for. And I told the city council members, I said, look, if 75 people write in and tell you to take something off the consent calendar, I don't care if they're asking you to do it because there's bubble gum on the floor. I don't care what their reason is. I would take it off. It just means you have a public hearing and you hear people's comments and then you vote on it. That's all it does. It doesn't remove it. Nope. I'm not going to have anybody telling us. I'm not going to take it off the consent calendar. So they said that was normal to do that. I said, I don't care if it's normal. That doesn't make it right. And it wasn't right when you did it for the Sears building, and it's not right doing it now, and it won't be right when you do it for other ones. Because they wouldn't put that on the consent calendar and vote on it if they weren't already sure they had the votes to pass it. Because why would you bother to give the 45-day notice to the airport commission? So we asked the airport commission, what do you do then once you get that notice? They write in a response to that, and they're going to write one in, and as soon as they do, we will get a copy of it. We've asked for a request for the copy of the one for the Sears building to see what that says. But we did find out that part of the issues that were brought up by the Planning Commission that the staff put in there like the resolution and stuff, basically to do all this stuff, and the letter basically acknowledging, here's why we're overriding the airport commission, was not written by the staff, it was written by the developer. And all the staff did was go through and look it over and see if it was okay legally and put their name on it, like it was theirs. So the staff is not working for the people. They are working for themselves, for the developers, for the owners, for whoever, but they're certainly not working for us with these type of reports that are supposed to be objective. So here's our strategic plan. We want to attend the next 5 meetings prior to December 3rd. Since they didn't allow us to have a public hearing, we're going to go there, spend our 3 minutes at the start of all those meetings, and can speak on anything. There's 200 pages plus of comments that we wrote in. We will start reading those comments. We will give an introduction. You start reading the comments. So if you've never spoken before the city council, don't worry about it. There'll be plenty for you to say. You can just start reading those comments. Say, I am here because I understand that you might not be able to read the 900 pages that's in the EIR and all this stuff. So we're going to make sure it gets on the record, and we're going to start reading them to you. And the more people we can get there for more of those meetings during the general comment session, I hope we can filibuster some of those meetings with 2 hours of comments. That's one of the things. So we'll just read through those 200 pages, as well as make comments about the staff reports and other things. I'll be addressing that, and Brian in our 3-minute periods to do that. The other thing, we're going to create a policy paper like we did with the fruit flies. Very objective, very independent, create our own policy paper addressing the issues that we found in all of this, and do some short videos. We did learn from meeting with the city clerk that we can put up videos for those 3 minutes. We can put up a 2 or 3 minute video and they'll play it. Now those, I think, can have a bigger impact in a lot of cases than us just standing there reading stuff, because people like to see it. And once it's on the record, then the video is available for anyone to watch it afterwards. So, things we're going to address. We're going to address the airport high-density housing issue. We're going to address the exceptions to the general plan, specific plan, and the zoning, and other things that they referenced as unavoidable impacts in the EIR. At the end of their report for the Planning Commission, they said, well, there's a number of things that we can't rectify, and even though we can't rectify them, the project is still good because it meets our housing stuff and all the rest of that, and we need to go ahead and move forward with it. So we're going to address that. We're going to address the parking, the expanded occupancy level, the contradiction to the blue zone. If you saw the paper recently, the city's going to hire a new employee at $150,000 a year to be their blue zone person, because they paid to become one of the blue zone cities. Does everyone know what the blue zone is? The blue zone was created by this group that worked with National Geographic and went out and found all the areas in the world where people live the longest. And they found out what drugs they take. So they found out what environments these people live in that live to be 100, and the way they do things and so on. So now they want to spread that amongst other cities. Now, one of those cities that was considered a blue zone was Loma Linda. Well, they have a huge medical center there. Maybe that's why they live longer.
It's
But
diet,
anyway.
Louis.
What?
It's diet.
So anyway, they signed up for this blue zone thing, was to make your life more harmonious and easygoing and less stressful, so that you can live longer and so on. So,
You're stressing me out.
so one of the things we're going to address is all these high-density apartments is a complete contradiction to this whole blue zone initiative, right? You want to make everything harmonious and everybody free and be able to go out and dance in the streets and, you know, do their yoga and all their stuff and just feel good and, you know. And then what? You're going to put high-density housing and put more cars on the streets and more warehouses and more semi-trucks and, you know, if you're feeling really bad, you can go out and count the semi-trucks as they go by. So that's one of the things we're going to bring up. We're going to bring up a number of things in the EIR. The alternative uses part of the EIR is one that really gets me. Now, the law requires them to put in those alternative uses, But it doesn't require them to put any kind of market analysis as to how they came up with it. Other than one of the alternative uses has to be to do nothing. The other alternative use is they can come up with whatever they want, basically whatever the developer told them. But there's no justification for what they are. They're not appraisers, they're not acting as an appraiser, doing the highest and best use analysis to do that, so that's one of the issues. Basically, half of that EIR is a marketing tool. They talk about the objectives of the project. Well, they're simply there to do an environmental impact report. The objectives of the project should be no never mind to them. What do they care? So they go through the objectives of the project. I asked somebody during one of the meetings, I said, so which one of these objectives is good for the people? Well, I'm sure there is something in there that you can find that would be good. Yeah. But that's one of the issues. There's a number of errors in there about parking and other things. And the objectives, they have objectives in there that they're trying to do and complete. Again, that's not part of an environmental impact report. The objectives of the project to provide housing and do all this stuff has nothing to do with an environmental impact report. The environmental impact report is simply to address the issues surrounding the environment, traffic, air quality, all that stuff. Yeah, question?
So where do they address what you just talked about? Do we not see anything from the city, the planning, until we get the final EIR?
Well,
Is that when they start getting, I asked some of these very questions.
right.
We sent in 1,000 questions
Right.
asking this.
And I sent a bunch of them in on
Right.
positions.
They haven't answered them. They have to answer
Yeah.
them.
When?
Well, before the December.
Before the final EIR comes out, we don't know when that is. Now, one of the
Is it
things,
part of the EIR or is it?
They are required by law, they are required by law to release the final EIR at least 10 days before the public hearing, and they will probably do it like 13 days. So you will have 1,000-page document.
Since it's over Thanksgiving.
That's what they did for the West Campus Metro. It was a 6,000-page document, they released it 11 days before.
And that's why they want to move the date from
Yeah.
December 3rd to the 10th,
So-
because they're going to release it over Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of read
And
it.
you can ask,
That's
though,
the only
because
other
it's a
thing.
holiday, you can ask for an extension of time to make sure that it doesn't overlap with the holiday and for the 10-day public.
so will they do that for this hearing for December 3rd, or is
I
that
don't know if
another
that's the
hearing?
final hearing, so that's what I don't know. So if that's the final hearing for
I
public,
don't think it's the final one. I think it's just the one for the airport commission, but we don't know. We need to ask that at planning department.
right, because they can break it into separate things that they approve. They could approve just the AWA.
Right, we still got to clarify that.
They might be doing like 6 different things or just the.
We're trying to set up a meeting now with the head of the planning department, Jennifer Lilly, to find out exactly what they do and what they're doing, because she signs off on all these things at the end. So we're going straight to who's responsible. for
Are
this
they
stuff.
receiving you open arms or are they?
They give us big hugs.
We're not expecting a Christmas card.
We probably won't be on the Christmas list, but we will get meetings with them. Yes,
Louis, another project that's going in that may or may not be on your radar is the Alta Vista that's off of Van Buren and Iris. That's 352 units, homes, that will have a huge impact with traffic. So there's a MAC meeting tomorrow, Municipal Advisory Committee, with our supervisor. And unfortunately, we're facing the same attitudes that you just described. Zone changes, general plan, etc.
so that's for a housing project?
Yes.
That's single-family homes?
No, well, it's zoned for 2.5 acres, Woodcrest area. And they're saying that half of the property cannot be built on because it is related to an Indian conservation. So consequently, they say that the homes are on 1.5 acres. 132 homes are on less than 1/4 acre.
Each.
And is that city or county?
That's county, and my concern is that you're not hearing about it because it goes through a different organization.
Right,
That's why I
goes through the
come to
county.
these meetings, so we can.
Cross-pollinate.
Send us an email on that and what it is, so we need to follow up on that and track that. Because we need to track all these projects. One of the big problems I have is they say we have to get these RENA numbers. See these RENA numbers. I went back and looked up all the hundreds of pages on RENA, all this stuff. And they say we have to have 20,000 units by 2029. But then I'm looking up the population growth. And that doesn't match the population growth. The population is growing maybe 1% a year. 3,000 people or so, which according to Riverside, we have about 2.7 people per household, so that's about 1,200 units a year. Okay, so that means in 5 years we need 6,000 units, not 20,000 units. 20,000 units, we're going to be overbuilt.
Especially when you're building one bedroom and.
Especially when you're building one-bedroom and studios. Yeah, which is not the demand now. That was the demand before COVID. Now a lot of people work at home, they want an extra room. That is not the demand now, and I've tried to explain that to them, that they're still working off plans that they had initiated back before COVID. A lot of these projects, they initiated them way back before COVID, drew the plans, and now they're not bothering to change them. And so, that's why we're fighting this. And besides, I think they're just going to terribly ruin a nice suburban neighborhood and shopping center that you can drive in and out, get what you need to be, and we can all be blue zone. Like we're losing our blue zone and we're going to a red zone. And, you know, maybe that's what they want us to do. Who knows? So, continuing on that policy paper and our comments, we're going to address their policies and procedures with Resolution 24076. That's the one that's at the top of every city council meeting agenda. We follow 24076, and then they turn around and don't follow. We're going to address things in the city charter they're not following, and just their basic community engagement and transparency. You know, they passed a resolution several months ago after this community engagement document that's 40 pages and took a year and a half to produce, and they put a resolution saying, oh yeah, we're adopting this, and everyone's ignored the environmental impact report. We want to address all this stuff individually, and both in the meetings and on paper with our policy paper and our videos. So that's the plan moving forward. Agendas only come out 12 days before the city council meeting, so we will need to see whether it's a 9 o'clock or a 1 o'clock or a 6 o'clock, you know, when they have their general comments, so we can let everybody know. You don't have to be prepared, just come down, we'll hand you the script, or we'll email it to you if you let us know you're coming, and you can come down and read your 2 pages, you know, and read it real slow so they get the point. Say, I'm going to read this slow, because I know some of you will be on your cell phone and not paying attention to me.
I have a question. Do they have to all be in there listening to this?
No.
Because if I would say, my time is to talk to the city council, and if they're not gonna sit here, I'm stopping my time until all of them are sitting. And force them to be there to listen to it, because they'll all just get up and walk out and let you talk to an empty room.
Every now and then one of them walks out to go to the restroom or something. Now, what was surprising about the consent calendar one is that Cervantes, there was rumor that she was going to remove our piece off the consent calendar. Then she had to go pick up her daughter at school, and it was right during that point. And so she was gone when they had that vote. So, whether that was planned or, I don't know.
Can they bring that off the calendar at any city council meeting?
Well, here's the interesting part about that city council meeting. I watched the video down to the end, and at the very end of the meeting, they were getting ready to close the meeting, and Chuck Connors said, I want to bring something back from the consent calendar that we just voted on, and take it out of consent calendar. Do I have votes to do that? And they did. They took an item out of consent calendar, and then they were going to discuss it. So one person called in, Jason, called in and commented, but it wasn't about that item. It was about the consent calendar in general. And so then after he was done, they re-voted on that item and put it back and voted on it anyway. So they pulled something out of the consent calendar even after they approved the consent calendar.
So they
Yeah.
could theoretically.
Theoretically, they could during that meeting, but I don't think
How many
afterwards.
To pull it out?
Just
Okay.
one person can pull it out before it goes in, or a staff member. It's just the public can't pull it out, but staff or city council or the mayor can.
A couple things that
we need help with. Does anybody have a drone? Because what we'd like to do is have a drone fly up the, whatever it is, 50, 60 feet, and take a picture of the backyards of everyone in the neighborhood that's back there, because all those people are going to be exposed. And that makes a great video when we say, this is what you're impacting. Because those people, I mean, we could have them come out in the backyard and put little signs that, we'll be respectful, but. And then the second thing is, we don't want to be just the people saying, we don't want anything. So if you have a suggestion, I mean, again, before we had talked to the owner of the property, and she had said, well, I'm thinking 3 stories, bottom be retail, 2 3-bedroom apartments. That would bring it down to about 200 apartments. We said, well, you know what, we don't like that, but that we can actually live with. That wouldn't be too bad. So what we need is, we need to come up with a solution. So we're not just constantly saying, no, no, no. We can say, no to your project, but here's what we'd like, or here's what we can live with. When we were in with the city council meeting, I told them, we're not against development. I mean, when I moved up there was nothing but orange trees. So I get development. We're just against this development.
This specific.
This specific. Well, I mean, again, we don't need 700 cars on the road.
Right.
I mean, I went to Van Buren from Mission Grove on Cannon. Took me 40 minutes in the morning. So we don't need that.
So we think 2 and 3 bedrooms, 200 units or less, retail on the bottom, and make them condos. But then you can rent them out if you want to, but then the parking's included. You don't have to worry about that, because with a condo, you get your parking
You have to
included.
get a waiver on the 10-year thing. That's the problem.
Well, they can just rent them out for several years, and then people can do an option to buy.
Right, I mean, they can build a building and the owner can say, I bought all the condos, I'm renting them.
Yeah,
So
and you can rent out condos.
So we're into development. There's no issue. I mean, it's going to be development. It's no, our hopes of a trampoline park for kids or even something else going in there is not on. We're into
Not
development.
necessarily, because they still have to make a lot of votes. They got to vote on the general plan, 5-2. They got to vote on the specific plan, I think 5-2. They have to override the zoning, I think 5-2. They have to do this airport commission 5. I don't think they can do them all at once. I think they have to do them separately, but that's what we're going to verify with the planning department once we meet with them.
The problem is the city council people that we talked to said, we're not getting a Home Depot, we're not going to get a Target. There's no big stores coming in. So you've got to figure out what can be in that area that makes money. And to be honest, they told us that retail's dead because everyone buys from Amazon. That's why we need 64 flights a day at March Airport. And it's like, well, you know what? I can wait a day and a half for my Amazon project. I'm landing in San Bernardino.
And the truth is, 3,000 ex-Kmarts did not turn into housing. Only about 30 of them did. The rest of them turned into other retail. They either got busted up into 2 or 3 units, but they got bought up by other retail chains that have been successful in what they promote, and so they stayed retail. It's only been a few that have turned into housing.
And they're all in.
Riverside.
Many of them are in California. Yeah.
Well, one of them's on, what, Iowa?
Yeah,
Iowa.
that was already gone.
Yeah, that one's already on.
That was near the college.
But yeah, if you do have a drone and you can fly it so it doesn't crash, let me know so we can schedule.
And you got your drone license.
Well, it's not gonna go more than 60 feet, so.
So, does this plan sound reasonable?
Obviously, any suggestions, and Lori's found, she's been sending me emails because she'll find something and we can research it. I mean, she found that they changed the EV laws from 10% of the parking spaces have to be EV to 40%. Now, unfortunately, buried deep in the EIR, they had already said that. But
Close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that's, you know, when you think about it, they're saying they're going to run power for 208 EV chargers.
Really?
So when your lights dim, you don't. But again, my question is, they're only gonna put in 20, they're gonna have the spaces for the other 208. So my question, every time someone tells me something in the future is gonna happen, well, who's gonna decide that?
Who's going to be responsible?
Yeah,
to make
I mean,
sure
is
it
someone
happens?
gonna say, hey, we need to open up another 100 spaces? Because at that point, the developer may say, oh, no, I don't care. I'm not paying for it. And what's he care? He's already built his building. So those are things we need to look at.
Any other question? The other question?
Last meeting, you were saying you were going to contact Stater Brothers
Oh,
Corporation.
yes, we were, until we found out they do not own the building. We always thought that they owned the building because we have heard the Stater Brothers always buy. I looked up the public records. They do not own the building. We also had heard that the theater had been sold. They do not own, they're still under the owner. Same owner. Michelle Rubin and her company still owns it all. In fact, she took out a loan for $37 million in 2023, something like that. She paid off a $31 million and took out a $37 million interest only. That's public record. There was an article about it. So it's all. This will be this first property that I can see that she's selling off. Major part of the shopping center will be this apartment piece.
Is she retaining the funds for the parking? Who's getting the funds from the parking? Because I understand that she's gonna own that land.
Own the land
Well,
for.
she'll own the rest of the center because she's only selling the part for the apartment. She'll own all the rest.
She'll own the rest of the center, and she's agreed to share 91 parking spaces for the apartments, but I don't think that'll be enough. I think you'll end up with, now that it's unbundled parking where I can decide not to pay my $150 and park in the shopping center, I think those 250 spaces that are on that side all the way out to IHOP and all will all be full.
And this doesn't have to do with the Kmart, but on the other side of the shopping center, and I know everybody's going for this, Arco has put in, they want to expand their car wash.
Another car wash.
Because we don't have any in And they're going to put in a fast food restaurant, which I'm not sure which one they put in, because we've got everything except maybe a chicken restaurant.
Chicken place, yeah.
And then the other two empty lots, the one by the LA Fitness and the one by Sprouts, both of those are now going through planning. And they're going to be 25,000 square feet between the two of them. So
You know what they are?
we don't know yet. Michelle had said she'd let us know when she had a signed contract, but she may not be speaking to us anymore. Again, nothing personal, it's business, but yeah. So, but anyways, just, and obviously the Panera Bread is going in. Starbucks is going down by Farmer Boys. And then
Oh, one other thing before we add, there's that other apartment building we mentioned up on Wood and Van Buren that's going across from Ace Hardware. I did look up that project and found that Big O Tire or Discount Tire stores initially took out, was trying to take out a permit to put a store in there for the Big O Tires, and they canceled it. And now it's up for 65 apartments. Which I think is another ridiculous location to put 65 high-density apartments. But that goes to show you, Discount Tire was willing to take the land, somebody else might be willing too to put in commercial. Because all of Van Buren along there needs to be commercial, because that's, if you're gonna put in all this housing, people need commercial establishments to get their cars fixed and go to the dentist and so on and so forth. So putting apartments in there is pretty ridiculous, so. Okay.
Timekeeper in the back's telling me whatever.
Yeah, 3 p.m. at a time. So any other quick questions? If not, we will keep you posted on when to show up and so on at the meeting so that we can basically flood them for these next 5
The
minutes.
important one is December 3rd, even if you don't go down to speak, we need you to come down to City Hall and stand behind us so that when we say, we're not approving this, everyone can cheer. And the mayor will.
Okay, thanks for coming, folks. Next meeting, October 9th, will be the candidates. So come with your questions.